She walked into his office with cupcakes and a heart full of love. But what she saw on the other side of that door shattered everything she believed in. Laughter that wasn't hers, hands that weren't supposed to be there, and a betrayal that cut deeper than words. She thought she was surprising the man she loved, but instead, she uncovered a truth that would change her life forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel, and like the video, and tell us, where are you watching from? Now let's jump into the story. Clara Bennett stood in her kitchen, the soft smell of lemon and lavender rising from a tray of freshly baked cupcakes. Her fingers were dusted in sugar, and her cheeks were slightly pink from the warmth of the oven. She hummed quietly to herself, wrapping each treat in a pale yellow paper liner, then topping them with a swirl of vanilla frosting. She reached for the small white note she had written the night before and slid it carefully under the ribbon. It read, "Just because I love you, love Clara." It wasn't their anniversary. Not yet, 2 more days to go, but something inside her whispered that today was important, that Nathan needed to be reminded of how much she cared. Lately, he had seemed somewhere else. Not just tired, not just busy, but distracted in a way she couldn't quite explain. Always texting someone from work named Rick from sales, always late, always with an excuse. Clara tried to push away the small ache that had started forming in her chest over the last few weeks. She told herself it was nothing, that marriage had its slow seasons, that work stress could make even the best man quiet and forgetful. But still, a part of her longed for the version of Nathan who used to light up when she walked into a room, the one who danced with her in the kitchen when no one was watching, the one who wrote notes on sticky pads and left them on her mirror. As she tied the cream-colored ribbon around the box, Clara smiled to herself. Today she wouldn't wait for him to come to her. She would go to him, surprise him at the office with cupcakes and love, the kind of love you didn't need a special occasion to give, the kind that just showed up because it still believed. She slipped into a soft green blouse. One Nathan had once said brought out the color in her eyes, and ran a comb through her short chestnut hair. She sprayed on a light mist of rose water and grabbed her keys before leaving. She snapped a quick photo of the cupcake box and texted it to her best friend Harper with a message. Heading to surprise Nate at work, wish me luck. The drive downtown was calm. The sky was soft with spring clouds, and the trees were just beginning to bloom. Clara rolled down her window at a stoplight, letting the fresh breeze wash over her. The city was moving around her, people crossing streets, sipping coffee, tapping on phones. All of it somehow making her feel like she was part of something larger, like life was unfolding just as it should. She pulled into the parking garage of the building where Nathan worked, Stratford and Gentry Marketing. She had only been there a few times before, mostly for office holiday events, or when he'd forgotten his laptop. He always told her the office was too hectic for visits, that clients were always around, that it wasn't a space for surprises. But today she didn't ask, she just went. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor of the lobby as she walked inside. Her cupcake box balanced neatly in her hands, the receptionist at the front desk, a young woman Clara didn't recognize, looked up with wide eyes as she approached. "Hi there," Clara said with a warm smile. "I'm here to see Nathan Bennett, just surprising him." The receptionist hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then she forced a smile. "Oh sure, he's in his office, Clara." Notice the pause. Notice the way the girl looked away just a second too quickly. But she brushed it off. Maybe the girl was just new. Maybe she was nervous. "Thank you," Clara said gently. Turning toward the elevators, she rode up to the top floor. Watching the numbers light up slowly, her heart beat a little faster with every level. A mix of nervous excitement and that old soft love that had lived quietly in her chest for 7 years. As the elevator doors opened, she stepped into the hallway. Everything looked polished and quiet. Framed awards lined the walls. Glossy photos of team outings and campaign wins stared back at her. In one of them, she saw Nathan smiling with a group of coworkers. A woman next to him rested a hand lightly on his shoulder. Clara squinted at the nameplate beneath the photo. Spring Gala, Nathan and Eloise. She had heard the name before, Eloise from his team. The one he had mentioned once or twice, the one who sent him memes that made him chuckle while they watched TV. Clara felt the tiniest flutter in her stomach, but shook it off. She was here with love, with cupcakes, with hope, not suspicion. She reached the door to Nathan's office. Her fingers adjusting the ribbon one last time, she took a slow breath, picturing the look on his face when he saw her standing there, imagining the warmth in his smile, the laugh he used to only save for her. But before she could knock, she heard something from the other side of the door, a laugh, light and soft, a woman's voice. Then Nathan's voice, relaxed and easy, in a tone she hadn't heard in months. "Your trouble, you know that." Followed by another giggle, closer now, more intimate. Clara's hand froze, her heart stilled. The ribbon felt suddenly tight against her fingers, like it was holding everything together. And just like that, everything began to unravel. Clara stood outside the office door, her breath held tight in her chest, the cupcake box growing heavier in her hands with each second that passed. She told herself it could be nothing. Maybe they were laughing about something silly. Maybe Eloise had just stopped by with a funny story. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But the tone of Nathan's voice, low and warm, didn't sound like work. It sounded like home, or at least how home used to sound. The way he spoke to her when they were wrapped up under blankets, when they danced barefoot in the kitchen, when he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Another soft laugh floated through the crack in the door, then a quiet sigh. Clara leaned forward, her fingers brushing the silver handle. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. Had he left it like that, or had someone else? Her heart pounded as she gently nudged it open inside. The light from the tall window spilled across the room in warm golden streaks. Nathan was sitting in his leather desk chair, relaxed, smiling. Not the forced polite smile she'd seen lately, but a real one, the kind that used to make her melt. And sitting sideways across his lap was Eloise. Her arm was draped over his shoulders, her coffee cup resting casually in one hand, her other hand reached up and toyed with the collar of his shirt, as if she had done it 100 times before. Nathan was saying something soft to her, his voice low, too quiet for Clara to hear clearly. But whatever it was made Eloise giggle again. Then she leaned in, their faces close. Far too close for colleagues. Clara didn't breathe, didn't move. She just stood there frozen in the doorway. Her eyes locked on a moment she hadn't been meant to see. Her fingers began to loosen. The cupcake box tilted slightly, and the ribbon slipped free, fluttering to the ground like a tiny pink flag of surrender. Nathan turned at the sound, his smile fading instantly, his face drained of color as his eyes met Clara's. For a second, no one spoke, no one moved. Even Eloise looked startled, her posture stiffening as she followed his gaze and saw Clara standing there. "Clara," Nathan said, his voice thick and unsure. But Clara didn't wait. She didn't ask for an explanation, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just turned, clutching the cupcake box like it might hold her together. Her heels tapped quickly across the hallway floor as she walked back toward the elevator, her legs moving on instinct. Each step felt longer than the last, each breath more difficult to take. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby with a trembling hand. As the doors closed, she finally exhaled. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirror-lined walls, wide-eyed and stunned, her lips pressed into a line. She had come with sweetness, with love, with a small quiet gesture to remind him of everything they'd built. And now she was leaving with nothing but silence and the sharp sting of betrayal. By the time Clara reached home, the weight of the cupcake box had changed. It felt strange now, like it didn't belong in her hands anymore. She placed it gently on the kitchen counter and stepped away from it, like it might break her. Inside, the frosting had shifted, the sugar pearls scattered. It looked like a celebration interrupted, like a party no one came to. She stood there for a long time, her back to the counter, staring at the wall across from her, not blinking, not moving. just listening to the quiet echo of her own thoughts. Her phone buzzed on the table nearby. She didn't reach for it. She already knew who it was. Nathan had probably called, probably texted, probably left voicemails full of apologies or excuses, or half-truths dressed up as concern. But none of it mattered in that moment. She felt cold and strangely calm, like her body had pressed a pause button on every emotion, and her mind had not yet caught up with what she had seen. Hours passed like that. The sun dipped below the skyline, shadows stretching across the living room floor. Clara finally moved, pulling off her shoes and curling up on the couch under the same blanket Nathan had once gifted her on a rainy Sunday. It didn't feel soft anymore. It just felt heavy. Her phone buzzed again. Then again, a message from Harper popped up. How'd it go? Clara stared at it for a long time before typing back. I saw something I can't unsee. Harper responded almost immediately. What happened? But Clara didn't reply. She couldn't bring herself to explain it yet. The words felt too sharp, too real, too painful to give voice to. She closed her eyes and let her thoughts drift back over the last few weeks. The late nights, the vague explanations, the unexplained absences. It had all been there. The signs, the tiny fractures in their life that she had painted over with hope. But now the truth was out, and there was no unknowing it. No pretending it was just a misunderstanding or an accident. She had seen it with her own eyes, the closeness, the comfort, the way he smiled at someone else like she didn't even exist. And in that moment, Clara knew something deep and final had shifted inside her. The morning after the office visit, Clara woke in Harper's guest room, her eyes heavy but dry. The sun slipped through the curtains, casting soft lines across the pale blue walls. She hadn't cried much, not the way she thought she would. Instead, the sadness sat inside her like a stone, unmoving and solid. Harper had made tea without asking, placing the mug on the nightstand beside Clara's bed and sitting silently on the edge of the mattress. She didn't ask questions, didn't push, just offered her presence like a warm blanket. Clara finally whispered, I saw them. And that was all she needed to say. The words were enough to crack the stillness. Harper squeezed her hand, her voice low and steady. You didn't deserve that. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice to hold. The rest of the day passed slowly. Clara walked through it like a visitor in her own life, eating little, speaking even less. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages from Nathan piling up, some apologetic, some panicked, some confusingly calm like nothing had happened at all. She didn't respond. Not because she didn't have anything to say, but because she wasn't sure what version of him would be answering back, the one who lied or the one who was sorry, if there was even a difference anymore. By the third day, Clara stood at the window of Harper's apartment, watching the wind move through the trees outside. She held her phone in both hands and finally typed a reply. We need to talk tomorrow. The cafe on Oaken Fifth at noon. The cafe was quiet when she arrived. A small corner place with chipped mugs and kind waitresses. Nathan was already there, sitting near the window with a cup of coffee trembling in his hands. He looked up when he saw her and stood, his face pale, his eyes tired. Clara didn't smile, didn't offer a hug. She just pulled out the chair across from him and sat, placing her hands gently on the table. Don't waste time with small talk. Say what you need to say. Nathan looked down at his cup, then back at her. His voice cracked slightly. It wasn't what it looked like. Clara blinked slowly. Then, what was it? She asked. Her tone even but not cold. Ran a hand through his hair. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. We were working late. Things got blurry. I didn't mean for anything to happen. Clara nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of the napkin. Did you sleep with her? Nathan flinched. No. No, it didn't go that far. She tilted her head. So it was only emotional. He looked relieved, as if that somehow made things better. Yes, exactly. It didn't get physical. Clara stared at him for a long moment, then said softly, You think that matters to me? You think that hurts less? He opened his mouth but no words came. Clara continued, You gave her the part of you that used to be mine, your attention, your time, your smile. That's not just a mistake, Nathan. That's a choice. He looked pained. I was stressed, work was heavy, and you were always busy too. It just happened. Clara shook her head, her voice still calm. Don't make this about the pressure. We were both tired, we were both busy, but I still chose you. Every single day, I still tried. Nathan reached across the table to touch her hand, but she pulled it back gently. Not in anger, just in finality. I don't hate you, she said. But I can't stay with someone who made me feel invisible. Tears welled in his eyes, he whispered. So this is it? Clara nodded slowly. This is me choosing myself. She stood up and placed a few bills on the table for her tea, then turned to walk away, her step steady, her heart heavier but also lighter in a strange new way. Back at her old apartment, Clara began packing the things that still belonged to her. She moved through the space carefully, collecting pieces of her life. Her favorite mug, the throw blanket her mother gave her sketchbooks from college, each item placed into a suitcase with quiet care in the bedside drawer. She found the sealed envelope she had once meant to give Nathan with the cupcakes. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened it, her eyes scanning the words she had written days ago. I still choose you every day. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from sorrow, but from the realization that those words were still true. Only now they pointed inward, now they were a promise to herself. She folded the note and placed it into a small box, then set the box inside her bag with the rest of her things. As she zipped the final suitcase closed, Clara didn't cry. Instead, she stood tall, her back straight, her chin lifted, her breath steady. She wasn't walking away because she had given up. She was walking away because she had finally remembered her own worth. Clara stepped into the small apartment above the flower shop with her bags in hand. The scent of jasmine and lavender drifted in from downstairs. The space was simple but warm, with soft lighting and creaky wooden floors that made the place feel alive. Mrs. Ellery, the kind widow who owned the shop, had smiled gently when she handed Clara the keys and said, "This place has good energy, and you seem like someone who needs a fresh start." Clara had thanked her quietly and climbed the stairs, her heart unsure but her step steady. She unpacked slowly over the next few days, placing her paints on the windowsill, hanging her favorite scarf near the mirror, taping sketches to the walls like little promises of what was to come. The silence here wasn't heavy like it had been before. It was comforting, like a soft blanket after a storm. Clara spent her mornings sipping tea by the window and her afternoons painting. The city sounds below were gentle and steady, reminding her that life was moving on, and so was she on afternoon. As the sun poured through the open window, Clara began her new art series. She titled it Light After the Fog. The first piece was a woman standing in the rain holding a box with a ribbon falling loose. The second showed a hand reaching toward a window lit by golden morning light. Each canvas held pieces of her story, but also pieces of her healing. People began to notice. Mrs. Ellery introduced Clara to a local gallery owner who agreed to host a small exhibit. Clara was nervous but agreed. Something inside her told her it was time to stop hiding on opening night. The gallery buzzed with quiet conversation and the sound of footsteps on concrete floors. Clara wore a loose linen dress speckled with paint, and her curls were tied back with a scarf. She stood in the center of her work, surrounded by faces she didn't know and paintings that told everything she had once kept inside. A young woman approached her near the painting of the woman in the rain. Her voice was soft. "I don't know your story, but this one feels like mine." Clara smiled gently and replied, "That means more than you know." Later that evening, after most of the guests had gone, Clara sat on a small bench near the entrance. She held the same cupcake box she had once carried to Nathan's office. Only now it held something new. Inside was the note she had written for him, the one that read, "I still choose you every day." Next to it was a new letter, addressed not to him, but to herself. She unfolded the paper slowly and read it aloud in a whisper. "Dear Clara, you didn't deserve the betrayal. But you do deserve peace. You deserve laughter that isn't borrowed. and love that doesn't make you feel small. You deserve mornings that start with calm and nights that end with comfort. Most of all, you deserve yourself whole, steady, and free. She placed both notes in the box and lined it with rose petals from Mrs. Ellery's shop, sealing it quietly like a time capsule of who she had been and who she was becoming a few weeks later. Clara received the package with no return address. Inside was a hardcover book titled Letters to the Woman Who Stayed Too Long. She flipped it open and found a handwritten note tucked inside. It read, "Thank you for telling the story so many women were too afraid to speak. You reminded me that walking away isn't weakness, it's a beginning." Clara closed the book with a small smile. Her heart swelling not with sadness, but with pride. Walked out onto the balcony of her apartment, the breeze lifting her curls. As the city moved gently below her, she no longer felt like the woman frozen in the doorway of a painful moment. She felt like the woman who had stepped through it and kept walking. Mrs. Ellery called up from below, asking if Clara would like to paint a mural for the shop's back wall. "Something about new seasons," she said. Clara laughed and replied, "I think I've got just the thing," as she picked up her brush and dipped it into soft yellow paint. Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing she had survived something hard and come out of it more herself than ever. Her story wasn't about the betrayal anymore. It was about the choice she made afterward, to choose herself, to heal, to grow, and to begin again.